Have you ever felt like someone's attention disappeared, almost overnight? One day they replied in seconds. They laughed at your jokes. They wanted to know how your day was going. Then, nothing. Short replies. No excitement, no effort. And the worst part? Nobody tells you why. Your mind starts creating answers that are usually much more painful than reality. Maybe I'm boring. Maybe I said something wrong. Maybe I'm just not enough. But what if I told you that being ignored isn't always about your value? In fact, psychology suggests that the reason people lose interest is often far more complicated. And understanding it might completely change the way you see every relationship in your life. Here's something strange. Imagine two books sitting on a table. One is always open, the other is locked. Which one makes you curious? Most people instantly want to know what's inside the locked one. Not because it's better, but because the human brain hates unanswered questions. Psychologists call this the curiosity gap. Our minds naturally chase what feels uncertain, unavailable, or unfinished. Ironically, this explains why attention often disappears after certainty appears. When everything becomes predictable, curiosity fades. That doesn't mean people stop caring. It means the brain stops paying the same level of attention. And this doesn't only happen in relationships. Think about your favorite song. The first time you heard it gave you chills. You played it every day. A month later, you skipped it. Did the song become worse? No. Your brain simply adapted. This is called hedonic adaptation. Humans get used to almost everything. Success, money, new phones, compliments, even people. The brain is built to notice change, not consistency. That's why someone who once couldn't stop talking to you might slowly become quieter without even realizing it. It's uncomfortable, but it's also normal. Now here's where things become dangerous. When people notice someone pulling away, they often panic. They text more. They explain themselves. They apologize for things they didn't do. They become available all the time. They try harder. But psychology shows that desperation often creates the opposite effect. Why? Because emotions are contagious. Confidence attracts. Neediness creates pressure. And pressure makes people want space. Imagine someone standing only 1 inch away from your face. Even if they're kind, you'd probably step back. Not because you dislike them, but because your brain wants room to breathe. Relationships work the same way. Sometimes chasing isn't proof of love. It's proof of fear. Fear of losing attention. Fear of rejection. Fear of being forgotten. And fear changes behavior in ways we rarely notice. Have you ever checked your phone 5 times in 10 minutes waiting for one message? That isn't love. It's uncertainty. And uncertainty activates the brain's reward system in powerful ways. Scientists discovered that unpredictable rewards release more dopamine than guaranteed ones. That's exactly why social media is addictive. You never know what notification is coming next. Sometimes there's nothing. Sometimes there's something exciting. Your brain keeps checking. People can accidentally become the same kind of emotional reward. When someone gives attention inconsistently, your mind starts craving it even more. Not because they're perfect, but because they're unpredictable. This is why many people confuse emotional uncertainty with deep connection. But they're not the same thing. Now let me ask you something. Who do you remember more? The person who complimented everyone, or the teacher who praised you only once? For most people, it's the second one. Scarcity creates value inside the mind. Again, this isn't manipulation. It's simply how human attention works. The brain notices what feels rare. This is why people who constantly seek approval often receive less of it. When you're trying to convince everyone to like you, you quietly communicate that you don't believe you're worth liking. And people notice signals long before they notice words. Body language, tone of voice, how quickly you respond, how easily you change your opinions. These tiny behaviors create invisible stories. People aren't only reacting to what you say, they're reacting to what your behavior suggests about your confidence. Here's another surprising truth. Sometimes, people don't lose interest in you. They lose interest in the version of you that stopped growing. Think about the most interesting people you've ever met. Were they interesting because they tried to impress everyone? Probably not. They had passions, goals, curiosity. Their lives kept moving forward whether people watched or not. Growth is magnetic, not because growth makes you perfect, but because change captures attention. A person who is constantly learning naturally becomes more engaging, not because they're performing, because they're evolving. Now imagine two friends. The first spends every conversation asking, "Do you still like me?" The second says, "I just started learning something amazing." Which conversation would you remember? One is centered on fear. The other is centered on discovery. People are naturally drawn toward energy that expands rather than energy that clings. But here's the hardest truth in this entire video. Sometimes, people really do lose interest. Not because you failed, not because you weren't enough, simply because people change. Priorities change. Life changes. Interests change. The same person who loved action movies at 16 might love documentaries at 26. The same friend who talked to you every day in school may become busy building a family. Not every ending needs a villain. Sometimes, it's simply life moving in different directions. Accepting this is painful, but refusing to accept it is even more painful. Because when you spend all your energy chasing people who are walking away, you stop noticing the people who are quietly walking toward you. There's one final psychological idea that almost nobody talks about. Your brain remembers rejection more strongly than acceptance. This is called negativity bias. You could receive 10 compliments, and one person ignores you. Guess which one your mind replays all night? The rejection. Not because it's more important, but because your brain mistakenly believes painful experiences deserve more attention. Understanding this changes everything. You don't need every person to stay interested. You don't need every conversation to last forever. You don't need universal approval to have meaningful relationships. Your value was never determined by someone else's attention. Attention is temporary. Character isn't. Popularity changes. Identity doesn't. The people who build the strongest relationships aren't the ones desperately trying to be unforgettable. They're the ones who become so deeply connected to their own purpose that attention becomes a byproduct instead of a goal. So the next time someone suddenly loses interest, don't immediately ask, "What's wrong with me?" Ask a different question. What part of my life have I been ignoring while chasing someone else's attention? Because the greatest irony of all, the moment you stop begging to be noticed, is often the moment you become impossible to ignore.